Welcome back to the Deepfake Dialogues. Today I'm joined by multimedia artists Francesca Panetta and Halsey Burgund, the co-directors of the Emmy Award-winning interactive documentary, An Event of Moon Disaster, which uses deepfake technology to imagine an alternative history where the Apollo 11 mission ended in tragedy. Let's dive right in. To kick things off, how do you describe an event of moon disaster to someone completely new to it? What is the core premise of this project? Fran, would you like to answer?
Sure, yeah, I can start. So, yeah, in Event of Moon Disaster, I guess the aim of the project is trying to show people how realistic deepfakes can be. So, we made this project now 6 years ago, but we were using the latest technology, both visual deepfake and also voice cloning, to show how easy it is to manipulate what someone says, and how easy it could be to believe that. And so I guess what this project does is take a fictional circumstance, as if the Apollo 11 moon landing had not gone well. And actually, there was a speech written for President Nixon in the eventuality of the moon landing not going successfully and the astronauts not being able to return. So he had a speech that was written for him. And our project is a film which brings that speech to life that Nixon never gave. The film is a little bit longer than just that Nixon speech. So we also used NASA footage. So we used real footage that was taken of the moon, of the Apollo 11 going up to the moon, but we also edited that. So that's not a deep fake, but it's what some people called a cheap fake. So manually editing that material to make it look as if the astronauts were crashed onto the moon and never returned. So that's what the project artistically was trying to do, was kind of represent what an alternative history. And, I guess it's more kind of broader aim was to show what's possible using synthetic technologies.
Yeah. And take us back to the genesis of this project. So what inspired it? How did the two of you come together? And how did the idea evolve from a concept into the complete deepfake that we see today?
I don't know. Was it the cookies at the Neiman house, Fran? I think that might have been the real inspiration that we had going there. That's
the Neiman
sorry,
house.
It's a little bit of an inside joke.
Was the space where I was spending a lot of time as a fellow at Harvard University, and it was during that time that I met Halsey.
Yeah, we were both fellows. I actually live and still live outside of Boston, so I'm here in the Harvard MIT realm, and I was and am still a fellow at the Open Documentary Lab at MIT. And Fran, being a fellow over at Harvard, there are sort of opportunities for fellows to meet each other and whatnot. And I think, both sort of heard about each other's interests, specifically in actually some other areas of sort of art and technology using audio and all that kind of stuff, location-based audio and whatnot. So I think we knew we were going to be friends. And we finally sort of met, and indeed that was true. And we started getting together on Friday afternoons at the Neiman House, which was where Fran's Neiman Fellowship took place, with a couple other fellows who were Knight journalism fellows, and just sort of chatting, eating the free cookies, and doing other fun things to try to sort of inspire ourselves. And one afternoon, we just, I think we had an opportunity to apply for some festival or something like that with a new project, and we were brainstorming about a lot of stuff, and it was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing at the time. And, being as we had science journalists in the room, they were very aware of that. And, I've been very interested in technology, and AI was starting to sort of take hold at that point. Perhaps we called it synthetic media back then rather than generative AI. I don't think that term had been sort of coined yet. And it was one of these sort of group sessions where everybody would throw out different ideas, and oh yeah, wasn't there that speech that was written that never got delivered, and then somebody was what about deep faking that speech? And then all of a sudden it sort of clicked, and we realized that we had this opportunity to tie into an incredibly seminal sort of historic point in human history, and use that as a vehicle to try to show, as Fran was saying earlier, some of the amazing positives that artistically these AI based technologies can be used in very interesting ways, creatively, but also in some much more nefarious ways in rewriting history, for example, in our case, or taking other untrue, sort of creating and spreading misinformation, disinformation. So we felt that, as a group of artists, technologists, journalists, this was kind of a really nice melding of all of our interests, and yeah, it felt like a interesting direction to go. And of course, the project changed quite a bit over the year or so that we were designing it initially, but yeah, that's kind of the genesis.
Awesome. And what was the creation process like? And were there any aspects that were unexpectedly challenging?
I guess we were very lucky to work with two tech startup companies. So we worked with Canny AI, who did the visual deep faking, and we worked with a company called Respeecher to do the voice cloning. Now, actually, that was pretty straightforward. They were really enthusiastic to work with us. They were pretty clear about what we needed to do to get them material that would do both the voice cloning and the video dialogue replacement, as it was called, to change the visuals. So that was kind of, I guess we didn't realize it was going to take so much training data. Like 6 years ago, we needed a lot of training data to clone Nixon's voice. That's not the case anymore. Perhaps we didn't know that. I think what took a lot longer, at least from my memory, Halsey, you might remember different things, but the kind of creation of the video, yeah, there was a lot of kind of looking at edits and trying to make the video crash seem like really dramatic. The Apollo 11 crash seemed dramatic. Actually, that was unexpected. We thought that we'd be able to get some like really we crawled through all the audio that we could find of both the control room and the astronauts, trying to find anything that sounded dramatic in their voices to make it sound urgent. And actually, astronauts are incredibly calm. And even when there was real like peril towards the end of the flight, they just didn't sound nervous at all. So, artistically, there are some challenges with that part. But actually, I think that the film went pretty smoothly. I think what took us a little bit longer was thinking about the contextualization. So we spent a lot of time talking to people who work in this area around exactly the framing of this. So both in the video and also in the interactive, we thought a lot about what exactly are we trying to achieve here? How do we start the film? How do we start it without giving away too much, but also doing it responsibly? How do we, if we're putting it on YouTube, do we need to watermark it? What is the contextualization within the areas that we've got less control of? So I would say we probably spent more time with building the interactive and all the materials around than we did actually building the film itself. That was the really hard bit. And maybe that is because this topic is really tricky, like how you maintain truth, how you build projects like this that don't undermine truth even further. What does kind of responsible use of AI and deepfakes within creative context? All of those are much, much more maybe tricky and thorny areas than filmmaking, which is very hard, but maybe was slightly more known to us about the process that we'd need to go through to storyboard and make that film. So we definitely spent a lot more time on that element. Halsey, what bits were unexpected to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that. Certainly, the voice cloning was a lot harder than it is now in a very significant way, and a lot harder at the time than the visual stuff. I would say to sort of continue with your um, what I agree with, which is that the sort of surrounding contextualizing educational materials were in some ways more challenging. We made a website for this, and we thought a lot about sort of who is the audience and what does the audience know already, and what therefore do we need to educate them on, and where do we need to start with that? Like, how basic do we need to get? And we ended up sort of doing this semi-tiered kind of situation where we'd sort of start very simple, like, do you think you can spot a deep fake, and kind of make that interactive, and then after the film ask questions about the key takeaways that we hope at a very, very basic level people would understand. Like, the speech was real, but the voice delivering the speech was not real. And the video of Nixon was a real video, but it was manipulated to move the mouth in a different way to voice different words, those kinds of basic things. And then, of course, sort of our resources page on the website was like the deep dive where anybody who might want even more information could go to get more and more. So that's kind of how we handled that, because we didn't really know exactly what people are aware of or not at that time, and that's always a challenge. But yeah, that was definitely a big one.
And what's fascinating about this project to me is that you took a historical moment from 1969 to critique a technology from the 2020s, or in your case, 2019. But why look backward to the Apollo mission to talk about the future of truth and misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, that's I think there's a lot of reasons why it sort of worked. I don't think I don't recall sort of us specifically thinking we've got to do something in the past to sort of talk about the present. I do think that there are a number of parallels and a number of reasons. To me, one of the big reasons that we didn't want to, we wanted to address something that was like a seminal event, like something that people would know about, and that if you can rewrite history of something nobody knows about, it's not really that impactful. But if it's something that everybody knows about, it becomes much more impactful. And we emphatically did not want this to be a political project. We live in very divided political times. Even back in 2019, we were pretty divided. And if we had tried to tackle something that was more modern day, more present, and use a U.S. president, for example, it would have been, I think I think we probably would have almost certainly lost a lot of the point of the project, to a political dialogue instead of a dialogue about disinformation, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was really important. I also think, to me, my other sort of big point, I mean, in some ways, the Apollo 11 project at that time was sort of an equivalent of, it was like the moonshot of that time. The moonshot of today is AGI, perhaps artificial general intelligence, and this is the forefront of our technological landscape today. And at that time, getting to the moon was the forefront of the technological landscape, which led to all sorts of amazing advances in science and technology that have shaped the next 50 years, despite the fact that we haven't gone back. Right? I mean, very interestingly. And today, AI, I think, really is that sort of baseline technology, which is going to, in ways that nobody really knows, is going to affect virtually everything of in our future. So it felt like there were a lot of parallels there, and it is really, it is kind of ironic, I suppose, to go back 50 years to critique something so modern, but it felt pretty natural. I don't know, Fran, if you had other thoughts on that. That was, yeah.
No. I think that kind of something that's not polarizing, that feels so accessible to so many people, even if you don't have any interest in space and science, and people, almost everyone that we've talked about this project there's been some place in their heart for the 1969 moon landing. No matter where geographically they are, however old they are, it's somehow resonated. And that fact that it's not a polarizing topic, I think, really made it work.
Yeah. And how did you navigate the ethical line between demonstrating the danger of deepfakes and avoiding becoming a purveyor of misinformation yourselves? I know that you touched on already on making sure that the surrounding material when you presented the project was uh, like promoted the made clear that it was a deepfake. But is there anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we really did a lot of consulting. Even before we started making the project, we had started to reach out to people who are real scholars in this area who run organizations around misinformation, disinformation. And we weren't necessarily at that stage consulting with like what that contextualization could be, but we were sense checking right from the beginning whether it was a crazy idea. And then as it got, further and further down the line, we did begin to like literally go back to organizations like Witness Media and say, what is needed to make this ethically solid, and like, is it absolutely necessary to put massive watermarking all over it or not? And in that case, they were like, no, we think that actually the way you framed this and the contextualization is enough. And so we did not think that we were the experts in making that decision. And I think that goes really for any kind of creative materials that are made in this area. And, Halsey and I are working on another piece that's also about disinformation. And similarly, we have been talking to people all the way along around some of the ethical dilemmas around that piece. And I think that it's always a good idea to bring in people who aren't just artists, but are real authorities in these areas to sense check some of your decisions, because like we're used to pushing things quite far as artists. Like artists know how to like reach people emotionally and push buttons and create controversy, but it does come with an ethical responsibility. And so we were really lucky to have people who really were happy to talk to us all the way through the project.
Yeah, I would just add quickly that it's, then even more so, but now still, there aren't clear right answers to these questions. There's no, it was critical that we speak to all the folks that Fran was talking about us speaking to and consulting with, but it wasn't like everybody out there in the world was like, this is the consensus approach that you need to take for this. It was, we don't really know, but based on your situation and blah, blah, this and that. And, this is probably the best direction to go in. And, it still remains that we don't have like a clear set of rules. I think we have some more best practices and things like that that are out there. And we have certainly more case studies and examples of how different folks have handled this in different situations. But it's a balance. It's going out, just like Fran said, collecting all sorts of different opinions and different expert knowledge, and then trying to assimilate that into our specific situation. And not, of course, forgetting about the aesthetics of the whole project, which are very important. And trying to balance that and trying to be transparent and just sort of earnest in that process, and to the best possible way, make it clear that we are, at that time we were doing the best we could. We were considering all these things, and this is what we came up with. And if 10 years from now it proves that maybe isn't the accepted approach, at least we were, we did our best, and we didn't just sort of arbitrarily make a decision, and we went for it. So I think that's kind of what everybody should be doing nowadays, is kind of, being as transparent as possible, and kind of, letting some folks into the process, that the thought process of why you ended up where you ended up, I think is really critical.
Yeah. And so what kind of response has the project received, and was it what you anticipated?
Well, I don't know. I never really know what to anticipate. I don't know. I mean, I always hope that the project will be, a success, and and a success in terms of, what is a success is obviously, always hard. There's the success that Fran and I would feel just simply from an aesthetic standpoint of creating something that we're proud of. And that, I was highly confident that we would get there because I knew we'd keep on working until we did get there. But as far as external success, you can define that in different ways. I feel like I remember at the time being surprised by the sort of take up that it started getting right from the beginning. That there was a lot of interest in it. At this point, I'm incredibly surprised that we're still the project is still being exhibited, in different, in places that it has been for a while and extending, or new places. We've had new exhibits go up in in 2025, which is, sort of 5-6 years after it originally was created. And that, in a sort of, when creating something using technology that is changing so rapidly, it's really kind of interesting that it hasn't, just become a sort of quaint thing that nobody really cares about anymore. That might have been interesting at the time, and I think that's largely because of the content, the moon, the Apollo 11 program, all of that sort of context. I think really helps with that. But yeah, I've been surprised at how it's continued to resonate and how it's resonated globally. I mean, we've had exhibits in America, in the UK, in all in Asia, and in all sorts, in Australia. I mean, we've had really all over the place, which has also been interesting. You know, Not that it should be an American thing because it was the Apollo 11, but it's it's always a bit surprising in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I think generally we've gotten very positive responses. Of course, we've had our fair share of people misunderstanding it and us having to, sort of, I wouldn't say we had to do any major damage control by any stretch, but certainly in some situations, having to explain more. I remember there was this one thing, Fran, wasn't there one when we were talking to folks at MIT, didn't somebody think like, oh, this is disrespectful to the astronauts or something? We might have had a little pushback initially, which we tried to manage. We understood, but didn't think it was enough to stop the project or anything. But I don't know, Fran. Do you remember any differently than I about or?
Well, I guess I would say, like, if the aim of the project was a kind of media literacy project to try and protect people against deepfakes, or to give them greater understanding of what is possible, and therefore maybe to be able to protect themselves at a later date, we don't have any evidence that has worked. Like, we never did evaluation. We have got kind of anecdotal evidence from people, creeping up to the screen and trying to look at the lips and go, wow, I never realized that, deep fakes could be so realistic. But like, in terms of your area of like behavioral change, like, we don't have any evidence of success at all. We've got lots of evidence of success of it as an artistic project, and it, gaining traction artistically. And maybe you can like infer from that it is doing something, but yeah, we've never run evaluation on it. So we don't really know whether it's really protected people against deep fakes in the future. Would like to hope to think that it has done.
Yeah, and
it hasn't solved the deepfake problem, of course.
Certainly hasn't done.
I don't think we were setting out to do that.
That was never our aim. Our aim was always more of a media literacy aim rather than trying to like actually stop people creating them.
I know.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, like, where specifically has it been exhibited, and like, where is it exhibited right now?
Well, it's still the MIT Museum right now.
Yep.
That's sort
still
of
in Copenhagen term. As well.
Copenhagen is still up in Copenhagen at the Enigma Museum there.
Still up online. You can see the project online at moondisaster.org.
That is definitely true. We had an exhibit that is no longer up that was at just earlier this year in Pennsylvania, in the U.S., which was interesting in that Pennsylvania is politically very interesting, and there's a lot of with elections and all that in the U.S. It was an interesting time to sort of have have something that I know we said the project isn't aimed to be political, but it just sort of inevitably this dealing with mis and disinformation. There's obviously a lot of that in politics nowadays. So that was an interesting spot for it. But yeah, I think most of the runs are, a couple months kind of thing. So but other than I guess Copenhagen and MIT are the sort of longer term ones that yeah, people can check it out. But online is obviously accessible to everybody.
Uh-huh. And so 6 years after the release of an event of moon disaster, deepfake technology is improving rapidly, and the barrier to entry to creating deepfakes is collapsing with all the consumer applications available now. So, are you more terrified or more hopeful than you were when you started, and where do you see us 5 years from now?
I guess for just to jump in on this, because Halsey and I are working on another project with another artist, Shahani Fernando, who we are, we're still working in this area of like deep fakes and voice cloning and misinformation. And I think the question that we're asking ourselves is not, is it relevant, but what is the role of media literacy compared to scaring people and undermining truth further? And maybe that's also a question for you and your project, which is, yes, we can tell people that stuff out there is fake and to be wary of it, but at what stage, like how much you enabling people to be able to spot it and do something about it and feel some kind of agency, or on the other hand, put the responsibility to, more structural organizations, to tech companies, to governments to be implementing changes, and how much is media literacy further stoking and fueling actually a whole kind of wave of distrust, which we know is hugely problematic, the rise in distrust in institutions, in media. So I personally think that although we absolutely know that media literacy has got a huge part to play at the moment because disinformation is not going away, actually the way that we go about that, the responsibility of how we do it, and how we try and give people like more than just fear to react to, I think is like, that feels very different 6 years on.
Yeah, I would agree with all that, and just sort of in terms of where we might be in the future, that is of course, an impossible question. There's certainly more of where I hope we might be than where we, I mean, who knows where we will be, and I certainly don't have insights into, where the technology is going to make it to in that amount of time. But I certainly have some thoughts. I mean, I first of all, I'm quite convinced that, AI generated materials are, way before 5 years from now are going to be completely indiscernible to the naked eye from, or to the naked ear, so to speak, from, quote unquote, real captured stuff. I mean, we're just getting so close to that already that that is certainly going to be achieved. And when that is achieved, there will be lots of societal effects. We're starting to get used to it now, which is good. And projects like ours and many others are hopefully, helping with that, sort of getting used to it, a challenge. I hope that there will be some kind of sort of broadly accepted, technological provenance tracking authentication system that people start using and starts becoming standard, such that there's a way that, on a video on Facebook, there'll be some kind of logo or some kind of little like, icon that indicates that it is, past whatever, past whatever sort of, requirements there are to certify that it is, original unmanipulated material or generated, not by AI, that kind of thing. There's lots of initiatives in that direction, and those are wonderful. To my knowledge, that hasn't really sort of taken off as a standard. I hope that we get there. I do think that one place we might get to, which is, kind of nice, is we might really get back to IRL. The world might just have to go away from everybody doing things like we are right now, which is online, and get back to, a true, is the most true way of authenticating yourself being there in person with somebody. I mean, yes, we can't fake that yet. Yet I don't know how we would ever fake that, but I do think that this is perhaps driving us back to that in some ways, which, I think as much as I take advantage of and enjoy the ease of communicating, and, Fran and I are working on a project that's, from across an ocean, and we wouldn't be able to do that without this. But there's something nice about perhaps getting back to more IRL stuff, and maybe that's one, perhaps semi-silver lining that some of these technologies might, some of the challenges with them might bring us to that place. So we'll see. But 5 years is a very long time. I mean, 5 weeks is a long time in AI development nowadays. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And to wrap things up, so I know you both mentioned that you're currently working on a new project involving AI voice synthesis. So can you give us a teaser of that project, and where can our listeners go to follow your work and learn more about you?
Sure. Well, I guess, Fran, we've started a new company, and our company is called Vocalize, and it's a voice talent agency. And since you won't be able to see us, we are smiling right now because it's not actually a company. It is sort of a fictitious company that our new project is bringing to the public. As I said, it's called Vocalize. It is we have a spokesperson, a famous spokesperson, Stephen Fry, the actor, is the spokesperson, and the idea of Vocalize is that Stephen Fry will train anybody and everybody to be able to be a successful voiceover talent. And you can earn money in the comfort of your own home and use your voice to have a wonderful living. And Stephen Fry will train you, but not Stephen Fry personally, because he can't train millions of people all at the same time. But Stephen AI will train you, a AI sort of clone of Stephen Fry himself. And the idea of the project is that people will engage with Stephen AI over a sort of 10 to 12 minute kind of experience where he trains you and gets you to practice scripts and all this kind of stuff. And then at the end of the experience, there's a bit of a reveal. Fran, I don't know how much we should give up, but turns out that over the course of 12 minutes, your voice can be recorded and it can be sort of taken from you, so we say, and represented in ways that you might not appreciate. So much like the Moon Disaster Project, this project is aimed at sort of showing the power of these new technologies, both artistically as well as in some more nefarious ways. And at this point, how quickly that can be done, and critically, in contrast to Moon Disaster, how it can be done, not just to famous presidents of the United States, but these kinds of manipulations can be done with individuals themselves. And so Vocalize is at vocalizetalent.org on the internet, and we also have installations. Fran, what are we? I don't even know where it's sort of most easily checked out. The experience can't be done online yet. It's just information about that. So
yeah, we're talking to a number of places about where it'll next be installed, so we don't have that. We can't tell you exactly where to go, but if you keep an eye on our website, we will update it when we've got some physical places that people can actually go to. And they can find out, more about our project on our website.
Yes, that's vocalizetalent.com. I think I might have said .org before, but apologies for that. But yes, vocalizetalent.com.
And I think I can add that to the show notes too.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So great. I think we're done. Thank you so much for joining me. This was an awesome conversation, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot too.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity. It was nice to meet you. Nice to be a part of this initiative that, as I said at the beginning, is super important. And sounds like I'm sure you'll get lots of other guests who have similar and different experiences as us. And I look forward to checking that out. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Deepfake Dialogues. If you found this conversation insightful, please follow and leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. See you in the next episode.